For thousands of years, humanity has searched every horizon for the answers to its endless suffering. We built empires, carved temples into mountains, crossed oceans, and filled libraries with sacred words. Yet despite all our progress, one question refuses to disappear. Why does the human soul still feel incomplete? The greatest tragedy may not be that we have lost our way, but that we have forgotten who we truly are. The ancient initiates whispered a dangerous possibility. They believed humanity had not been born powerless at all. They taught that every person entered this world carrying an extraordinary force, a hidden power of consciousness capable of transforming perception, reshaping destiny, and awakening a reality far greater than the senses reveal. But they also believed this knowledge could not be handed to the careless. It was concealed inside symbols, myths, sacred texts, and mystery schools, waiting for those prepared to seek it. Tonight, we journey through the oldest streams of wisdom ever preserved, from the Hermetic masters who declared that the universe is mental to the Egyptian priests who treated consciousness as the key to immortality. From the sages of the Upanishads who called the visible world an illusion to the Stoic philosophers who taught that perception shapes experience, and the Taoist masters who discovered an invisible current flowing through all existence. Although separated by continents and centuries, they arrived at a remarkably similar conclusion. They were all pointing toward the same forgotten truth, because the greatest discoveries are rarely about learning something new. They are about remembering what has always been there. Chapter 1. The Divine Spark Hidden Within. The ancient sages believed that every human being carried something far greater than personality, status, or reputation. The Corpus Hermeticum, one of the foundational collections of Hermetic wisdom, speaks repeatedly of the divine mind, not as a distant force to be worshipped from afar, but as a living intelligence reflected within every conscious being. According to this vision, human awareness is not separate from the greater order of existence. It participates in it, much as a single flame shares the nature of the fire from which it was lit. This idea was astonishing in the ancient world, and it remains unsettling today. Most people are taught to search endlessly outside themselves for certainty, approval, and fulfillment. We measure our worth through titles, possessions, achievements, and the opinions of strangers. Yet the Hermetic initiates insisted that these were only passing reflections upon the surface of life. Beneath them rested a deeper identity that could neither be increased by praise nor diminished by failure. An old Egyptian story tells of a prince who, after surviving a violent uprising, fled the palace disguised as a common laborer. For many years he forgot who he truly was. He worked in the fields, believing himself poor, insignificant, and powerless. Then one day an elderly messenger found him carrying water beneath the scorching sun. The messenger did not hand him riches or a crown. Instead, he simply placed an ancient seal in his hands, the symbol of his forgotten lineage. Nothing around the prince changed in that moment. The fields remained the same. The sun still burned overhead. His clothing was still worn and dusty. Yet everything had changed because he finally remembered who he was. The Hermetic teachers used stories like this to illustrate a profound truth. Transformation begins not with acquiring something new, but with remembering something forgotten. They believed humanity's greatest poverty was not a lack of resources, but a loss of self-recognition. Many people spend their lives searching for what they already carry, much like a traveler wandering the world in search of a treasure buried beneath his own home. This inward journey demanded courage because it required confronting illusions carefully built over years of habit. The initiates understood that people wear many masks. One mask seeks admiration. Another fears rejection. A third clings desperately to control. Over time, these masks become so familiar that we mistake them for our true identity. Yet beneath them remains a quieter awareness, the witness that observes every emotion, every thought, and every changing circumstance without becoming identical to them. This insight finds an unexpected companion in modern psychology. Researchers increasingly distinguish between fleeting mental events and the observing awareness capable of noticing them. Thoughts come and go. Emotions rise and fall like waves upon the sea. Identity, however, becomes healthier when it is rooted not in every passing reaction, but in a stable awareness capable of choosing how to respond. Though expressed in different language, the ancient teachers pointed toward the same realization thousands of years ago. One Hermetic master compared consciousness to the clear sky. Clouds may darken it, storms may rage across it, birds may pass through it, yet the sky itself remains unchanged. In the same way, anger, fear, success, and disappointment move through awareness without defining its deepest nature. The person who forgets this becomes enslaved by every emotional weather pattern. The person who remembers becomes steady amid constant change. This is why the mystery schools devoted years to inner training before granting students positions of influence. They believed that an undisciplined mind could misuse knowledge just as easily as it could misuse wealth or power. Inner authority had to precede outer authority. Self-command came before leadership. Awareness came before achievement. History quietly confirms this principle. Many rulers conquered kingdoms, yet remained prisoners of their own fear. Others possessed little by worldly standards, yet radiated a calm presence that inspired generations. The difference was rarely external. It was the condition of consciousness itself. Imagine two merchants who lose their fortunes in the same storm at sea. One curses fate, abandons hope, and spends the rest of his years blaming circumstances. The other grieves, learns, rebuilds patiently, and discovers strengths he never knew he possessed. The storm was identical. The inner response was not. The Hermetic teachers would say that one man lived from forgotten identity, while the other rediscovered the divine spark hidden beneath temporary loss. Perhaps this explains why genuine wisdom has always appeared strangely quiet. It does not rush to prove itself because it is not dependent upon applause. It acts from inward certainty rather than outward comparison. Such people often seem peaceful even during uncertainty, because their foundation lies deeper than circumstances. The invitation of this chapter is therefore simple, though far from easy. Before pursuing greater success, become more deeply aware. Before seeking influence, cultivate understanding. Before trying to master the world, begin by observing the movements of your own mind with honesty and patience. For the ancients believed that the greatest discovery a person could ever make was not hidden inside distant temples or forgotten scrolls. It was hidden within the silent awareness that has accompanied them since the beginning of their life, patiently waiting to be recognized. Become aware before becoming successful. That is where every lasting transformation begins. Chapter 2. The Greatest Illusion of Separation. The Hermetic philosophers suggested that human beings live behind veils of perception, Plato described prisoners mistaking shadows for truth. Taoist sages warned that names and appearances rarely capture the living essence of things. Though separated by continents and centuries, they arrived at remarkably similar conclusions. What first appears obvious is often the least complete understanding. This ancient insight remains astonishingly relevant. Consider how quickly the mind forms conclusions. A stranger fails to return your greeting, and the ego quietly whispers, "They dislike me." A colleague receives recognition, and another voice murmurs, "You are being overlooked." A season of hardship arrives, and the mind confidently declares, "Life is against you." Yet how often are these interpretations accurate? Perhaps the stranger never heard you. Perhaps your colleague labored for years unseen. Perhaps hardship is preparing capacities comfort never could. The world has not changed. Only the story attached to it has. The sages understood that the ego survives by constructing narratives. It constantly divides experience into success and failure, friend and enemy, gain and loss. While these distinctions have practical value, they become dangerous when mistaken for permanent truth. The ego desires certainty because certainty feels safe. Awareness, however, is willing to remain curious. An old Hermetic teacher once compared the ego to a man standing inside a single room with painted windows. Having never stepped outside, he believed the painted landscape was the entire world. Every opinion, every fear, every assumption was formed by those artificial images. One day someone opened the door. At first the sunlight frightened him, because it contradicted everything he believed. Only after walking beyond the room did he realize that reality had always been far greater than the picture surrounding him. How many of our own convictions resemble those painted windows? Modern psychology offers surprising support for this ancient observation. Cognitive biases influence nearly every decision we make. Confirmation bias encourages us to notice evidence supporting what we already believe while ignoring information that challenges it. Emotional reasoning convinces us that because we feel something strongly, it must therefore be true. Expectations quietly reshape perception before conscious thought even begins. The ancients possessed no laboratories, yet careful observation led them toward remarkably similar conclusions. They realized that consciousness is rarely neutral. It colors experience much like tinted glass colors sunlight. This explains why two people can witness the same event and remember entirely different stories. One remembers kindness, another remembers insult. One notices opportunity, another notices danger. Reality is shared, yet experience is deeply personal. A beloved story from the Upanishadic tradition speaks of a prince raised among shepherds after becoming separated from his royal family during infancy. Having known only poverty, he sincerely believed himself to be ordinary. Years later, an elder recognized the royal mark upon his hand and revealed his true origin. Nothing external changed overnight. His clothes remained simple. His surroundings remained unchanged. Yet his understanding transformed completely. He no longer lived as someone pretending to be insignificant. The ego had mistaken circumstance for identity. The deeper awareness remembered something timeless. Perhaps this is why genuine wisdom rarely begins with acquiring more information. It begins by seeing through false identification. We are not every fear that passes through the mind. We are not every success or failure recorded by memory. We are not every opinion spoken by others. These are experiences moving through awareness, not the awareness itself. The Upanishadic teachers encouraged seekers to observe thoughts rather than immediately obey them. In that simple act, a remarkable freedom begins to emerge. The observer awakens, the illusion weakens. Imagine watching clouds drift across the sky. No one mistakes the clouds for the sky itself because they know the sky remains even after every cloud disappears. Likewise, thoughts, emotions, and identities arise and pass away while awareness quietly remains. This realization is not an invitation to withdraw from life. Quite the opposite. It allows a person to engage life without becoming imprisoned by every changing circumstance. When criticism comes, awareness listens without collapsing. When praise arrives, awareness receives it without becoming dependent upon it. When loss occurs, awareness grieves honestly, without believing life has ended. Such freedom cannot be purchased because it arises from perception rather than possession. The ancient teachers, therefore, insisted that the greatest prison has no walls. It is built from unquestioned assumptions, inherited fears, and mistaken identity. The greatest liberation begins the moment we become willing to ask, "What if my first interpretation is incomplete?" For the deepest illusion has never been the world itself. It has been believing that appearances reveal the whole truth. Not everything seen is real. Chapter 3. The Conscious Creator. Throughout history, certain individuals have seemed to possess an unusual quality. They entered chaos without becoming chaotic. They encountered hardship without surrendering to despair. They inspired others not because they controlled circumstances, but because they carried an uncommon steadiness wherever they went. Ancient teachers believed these people shared one remarkable understanding. They knew that while no one governs every event, everyone participates in shaping the quality of their response. This was considered one of the greatest secrets of conscious living. A forgotten Hermetic legend tells of two apprentices who approached a revered master, asking to learn the hidden laws that governed destiny, believing they would receive secret symbols or mystical formulas. They were surprised when the master assigned each of them the same simple task: spend 1 year tending identical gardens. Both gardens faced the same weather. The same drought struck them. The same insects threatened the crops. At year's end, the first apprentice returned bitter. "The weather ruined everything," he complained. "Nothing was in my control." The second returned carrying baskets overflowing with fruit. "How?" asked the master. "I could not command the rain," the apprentice replied, "but I could improve the soil. I could remove weeds before sunrise. I could water carefully during dry weeks. I could learn from every failed season instead of cursing it." The master nodded. "You have learned the difference between reacting to life and participating in it. This distinction lies at the heart of conscious creation." 2. Often people imagine creation as something mystical, reserved for extraordinary individuals. The ancients viewed it differently. Every conversation creates trust or distance. Every habit creates strength or weakness. Every repeated thought strengthens one pathway while allowing another to fade. We are constantly participating in the unfolding of our lives, whether intentionally or unconsciously. Stoic philosophers expressed this beautifully. They taught that external events often lie beyond our command, yet judgment, intention, and response remain astonishingly free. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself that circumstances do not disturb us nearly as much as our interpretations of them. Centuries later, Psychology would echo this observation. Researchers discovered that between stimulus and response exists a brief but powerful space, a moment in which awareness can interrupt automatic reactions. Emotional regulation, resilience, and thoughtful decision-making all depend upon enlarging this invisible space. The ancients had already been training it for generations. Meditation, contemplation, silence, disciplined speech, and careful self-observation were not escapes from life. They were exercises strengthening conscious choice. An old Taoist story illustrates this perfectly. A farmer's horse ran away. His neighbors declared, "What terrible misfortune!" The farmer simply answered, "Perhaps." Days later, the horse returned, bringing several wild horses with it. "What wonderful fortune!" "Perhaps," the farmer replied. His son attempted to ride one of the wild horses, fell, and broke his leg. "What terrible luck!" "Perhaps." Soon afterward, soldiers arrived, conscripting every healthy young man into a devastating war. Because of his injury, the farmer's son remained behind. The story never reveals whether any event was ultimately fortunate or unfortunate. Instead, it teaches the extraordinary wisdom of withholding immediate judgment. Consciousness becomes free when it no longer rushes to label every experience before understanding its deeper purpose. This is conscious participation. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" the wiser question becomes, "Who am I becoming through this?" That subtle shift transforms hardship into instruction, failure into refinement, delay into preparation. Responsibility quietly replaces victimhood. Notice that responsibility is not blame. The ancient philosophers never claimed individuals caused every circumstance they encountered. Storms arrive, illness appears, loss visits every family eventually. Conscious participation does not deny these realities. It simply refuses to surrender the freedom of response. History repeatedly honors such people, leaders who remained compassionate amid conflict, teachers who transformed suffering into wisdom, builders who continued laying one stone each day despite years without visible progress. Their greatness was rarely found in easier circumstances. It was found in deliberate responses. Imagine two sculptors working with the same cracked block of marble. One throws it aside, convinced it is ruined. The other studies the fracture until he discovers that it naturally outlines the folds of a robe he had planned to carve. What seemed like damage becomes part of the masterpiece. Life often offers similar stones. Consciousness determines whether they become obstacles or foundations. The mystery schools believed this was the true meaning of creation. Not commanding the universe to obey every desire, but learning to shape character, perception, and action so skillfully that each circumstance became material for wisdom. The invitation, then, is wonderfully practical. Pause before reacting. Observe before judging. Reflect before speaking. Choose deliberately instead of automatically, for every day offers countless opportunities to participate consciously in the life unfolding before us. We may never control every chapter, but we always help write the next sentence. Docrecate deliberately. Chapter 4. Identity creates reality. Many people spend their lives trying to change their circumstances while secretly believing they are unworthy of anything different. They chase new opportunities with an old identity. They pursue success while still introducing themselves to life through fear, limitation, and doubt. The ancient masters observed that this inner contradiction quietly governs every decision. A man who believes himself powerless will unknowingly reject doors that appear before him. A woman who believes herself undeserving will sabotage blessings before they fully arrive. The outer world often follows the blueprint already accepted within. The mystery schools of Egypt understood this principle long before modern psychology gave it names. Before an initiate was entrusted with sacred teachings, he was not asked how much he knew. He was asked who he had become. Years were spent cultivating discipline, patience, honesty, and inner composure before higher knowledge was revealed. Their teachers believed that wisdom placed into an undisciplined identity became dangerous, while wisdom planted in noble character multiplied into lasting transformation. The initiation was never merely about learning hidden symbols. It was about becoming someone capable of carrying greater responsibility. Every ritual reminded the seeker that the first temple to be rebuilt was the self. This same pattern appears throughout history. Ancient philosophers rarely promised shortcuts. Instead, they focused relentlessly on character. They understood that every repeated thought becomes a repeated action. Every repeated action becomes a habit. Every habit slowly hardens into character. And character, over many years, quietly becomes destiny. Nothing changes overnight. Imagine a young sculptor apprenticed to an old master centuries ago. Every morning he eagerly attempted to carve magnificent statues, only to have his teacher calmly erase hours of work. Frustrated, the apprentice finally protested. "Why do you keep destroying what I build?" The old sculptor smiled gently. "I am not correcting the statue," he replied. "I am shaping the hands that create it." The apprentice did not understand those words for many years. Eventually, he realized that every correction had strengthened patience, precision, and discipline inside him. One day, his hands naturally created beauty, because beauty had first been carved into the craftsman himself. So it is with human consciousness. Life rarely asks, "What do you want?" It quietly asks, "Who are you becoming?" This truth echoes through Stoic philosophy as well. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that every action either strengthened or weakened his character. A single decision seemed small. Thousands of similar decisions became identity. He understood that the emperor he appeared to be mattered less than the person he practiced becoming in private. Modern neuroscience now offers remarkable support for these ancient observations. The brain strengthens the neural pathways we use repeatedly. Behaviors performed consistently become increasingly automatic. Identity is reinforced not through isolated moments of inspiration, but through repeated patterns of thought and action. We literally become more like the person we repeatedly rehearse. The ancient sages discovered this without laboratories. They simply observed life carefully. Notice how two people facing identical opportunities often respond completely differently. One immediately searches for possibilities. The other notices only obstacles. One speaks with quiet confidence. The other apologizes before even beginning. The difference is rarely intelligence alone. More often, it is identity silently directing perception. The philosopher becomes curious. The victim becomes defensive. The servant becomes generous. The fearful becomes suspicious. Identity quietly filters reality before reality reaches conscious awareness. That is why ancient initiations rarely began with changing the world. They began with changing the seeker. This principle also explains why temporary motivation so often fades. Excitement can change behavior for a day, Identity changes behavior for a lifetime. If a person believes they are disciplined, they naturally protect their routines. If they believe they are compassionate, kindness becomes spontaneous. If they believe they are a lifelong learner, challenges become invitations instead of threats. Indanity simplifies difficult choices because it answers them before they appear. An old Taoist story tells of a wandering traveler who met an elderly gardener tending a modest mountain orchard. The trees were healthy, the pathways immaculate, and every tool carefully maintained despite the gardener owning very little. The traveler asked, "How do you remain so faithful to work that no one sees?" The old gardener laughed softly. "I am not caring for trees. What do you mean?" "I am caring for the gardener." Those simple words contained extraordinary wisdom. Every small act was shaping the person performing it. Each morning of careful attention strengthened patience. Each season of faithful labor strengthened resilience. Each quiet task strengthened gratitude. The orchard became beautiful because the gardener had first become beautiful in spirit. The outer reflected the inner. Perhaps the greatest mistake of modern life is believing identity is discovered only once. Ancient wisdom suggests something far more hopeful. Indanity is continuously created. Each decision whispers an answer to the question, "Who am I becoming?" Every act of courage says, "I am courageous." Every honest conversation says, "I am truthful." Every patient response says, "I am becoming peaceful." Every disciplined morning quietly builds a disciplined life, little by little, stone by stone, character by character. The life you admire is often built long before anyone notices it. The ancients knew that success without character collapses quickly. Character without immediate success, however, continues quietly growing until opportunity finally arrives. When opportunity and prepared identity meet, transformation appears almost effortless. People call it luck. The wise call it preparation. So instead of asking only what future you hope to create, begin asking a deeper question every sunrise. What kind of person must I become for that future to feel natural? Because your greatest achievement will never be what you possess. It will always be who you become while pursuing it. Choose that identity deliberately. Then practice it daily. Become the person you seek. Chapter 5. The Emerald Tablet's Greatest Mystery. Few ancient texts have inspired more fascination than the mysterious Emerald Tablet. Though astonishingly brief, its words echoed across centuries, influencing Hermetic philosophers, alchemists, scholars, and seekers of wisdom. Hidden within its concise lines appears one of history's most enduring principles, as above, so below, as within, so without. For thousands of years, these words have been interpreted in many ways. Some treated them as sacred metaphysics. Others saw profound philosophical symbolism. Regardless of interpretation, one practical insight remains remarkably timeless. The condition of our inner world profoundly shapes the way we experience and engage with the outer world. This was not an invitation to magical thinking. It was an invitation to radical responsibility. The Hermetic masters believed that every visible creation begins in an invisible realm of thought, intention, character, and consciousness. Before a civilization builds temples, someone imagines them. Before a kingdom falls into chaos, disorder usually begins within hearts and minds, long before appearing in streets and palaces. Invisible causes often precede visible effects. Ancient Egyptian temple schools understood this principle with extraordinary seriousness. their students were not rushed into sacred chambers. Years, even decades, could pass before an initiate crossed certain thresholds. Modern readers often assume this was merely to protect secret knowledge. The deeper reason was far more profound. The initiate himself had to become worthy of what he sought to understand. One ancient story tells of a young seeker who arrived at a temple, convinced he was ready to receive the highest mysteries. He possessed a brilliant memory, exceptional intelligence, and endless curiosity. Surely, he thought, wisdom was simply information waiting to be acquired. The high priest welcomed him kindly, but gave him an unexpected assignment. Return tomorrow before sunrise. The young man arrived. Instead of receiving instruction, he was handed a broom. For months, he swept stone corridors. He polished bronze vessels. He carried water from distant wells. He arranged scrolls with meticulous care. Days became seasons. Seasons became years. Growing impatient, he finally approached the high priest. "I came seeking sacred wisdom," he protested. "Why do you keep giving me ordinary work?" The old teacher looked into his eyes and replied, "You still believe wisdom enters through the ears." The young man stood silently. The teacher continued, "Wisdom enters through the character." Only then did the initiate begin understanding the lesson hidden inside every ordinary task. Each repetitive action trained attention. Each humble duty dissolved pride. Each quiet responsibility strengthened discipline. Without realizing it, he had been mastering the only temple that truly mattered, his own mind. Only after years of inner refinement was he invited into the sacred chamber. Nothing magical occurred there. No dazzling miracle appeared. Instead, he discovered an astonishing truth. The chamber reflected exactly what he had become. The emerald tablet's famous phrase suddenly became alive. As within, so without. The sacred chamber revealed no hidden universe separate from himself. It revealed that the greatest mysteries had always begun inside the observer. Modern psychology quietly supports this ancient intuition. Our expectations shape perception. Our beliefs influence attention. Emotional states affect judgment, relationships, and decision-making. Two people can walk through the same city, experience the same conversation, or face the same challenge, yet interpret everything differently because their inner landscapes differ. The world often acts like a mirror rather than merely a window. A fearful mind notices threats first. A grateful mind notices opportunities. A resentful heart remembers insults. A peaceful heart remembers kindness. The circumstances may be identical, but consciousness changes the experience. This is why Stoic philosophers insisted that events themselves disturb us less than our judgments about them. Taoist sages taught that inner harmony allows us to move with life's changing currents instead of exhausting ourselves fighting them. Hermetic thinkers expressed the same truth through the language of correspondence. Different traditions, one timeless observation. Champion begins within. Consider a master builder preparing to construct a magnificent temple. Long before the first stone is laid, every measurement exists in careful plans. Every arch, pillar, and chamber has already taken shape in the architect's imagination. If the blueprint is flawed, no amount of expensive stone can produce lasting beauty. The same is true of a human life. Your thoughts become your emotional architecture. Your emotions influence your choices. Your choices become habits. Your habits shape your character. Your character gradually constructs your destiny. The invisible always leads the visible. This understanding also transforms how we approach difficulty. Instead of asking only, "How can I change my circumstances?" the wiser question becomes, "What inner quality is this moment inviting me to develop?" Patience, courage, humility, discipline, compassion. Every challenge becomes an apprenticeship. Every obstacle becomes a craftsman shaping the soul. The Hermetic masters believed that when the inner order changes, the outer life often begins reorganizing in surprising ways, not through supernatural shortcuts, but because clearer perception, steadier emotions, wiser decisions, and stronger character naturally produce different outcomes over time. The mirror responds, the reflection follows. So before demanding that the world become different, spend time refining the invisible architecture within yourself. Cultivate clarity before ambition, integrity before influence, peace before power. The greatest transformations rarely begin with dramatic events. They begin with quiet changes in the unseen chambers of the heart and mind. For this is the enduring mystery whispered by the Emerald Tablet across the centuries. The above is reflected in the below. The within is reflected in the without. Chantion the above. The below follows. Chapter 6. How Fear Creates Invisible Prisons. Imagine a young warrior standing outside the gates of an ancient city just before sunrise. His armor is polished, his sword carefully sharpened, and his years of training have prepared him for this very moment. Yet as the distant drums begin to echo across the valley, something unexpected happens. His breathing becomes shallow, his hands tighten around the sword, his mind races through countless disasters that have not yet occurred. In only a few moments, the battlefield has already been lost. Not because the enemy has attacked, but because fear has conquered the warrior from within. The ancient masters understood something that modern psychology has only recently begun to explain. Fear is not always the result of danger. More often, danger becomes magnified by an undisciplined imagination. A frightened mind sees threats everywhere, even where none exist. It mistakes possibilities for certainties and shadows for enemies. This is why so many invisible prisons are built without walls. The prison of self-doubt, the prison of regret, the prison of imagined failure, the prison of tomorrow's uncertainty. No chains are needed because the frightened mind willingly locks its own door. Ancient Stoic teachers observed this pattern repeatedly. They noticed that people rarely suffered only from events themselves. Instead, they suffered from the stories they told about those events before they even unfolded. A delayed journey became a disaster. A difficult conversation became humiliation. A single setback became proof of permanent failure. Fear quietly enlarged every obstacle until even ordinary life felt overwhelming. The greatest battle was never outside. It was always within. An old tale tells of a commander who trained his soldiers in a way that confused every visitor who watched them. Rather than beginning with weapons, he first taught them to sit silently beside a flowing river before dawn. There they learned to steady their breathing while observing the changing current. One impatient recruit finally asked, "Master, when will we learn to defeat our enemies?" The commander smiled. "When the river no longer frightens your reflection." The young soldier frowned, unable to understand. Years later, he finally realized that the commander had never been teaching warfare alone. He had been teaching mastery over perception. A trembling mind cannot recognize reality clearly. A peaceful mind sees opportunities invisible to panic. The river became the first teacher, Fear narrows awareness. Calmness expands it. Modern neuroscience beautifully echoes this ancient observation. When fear dominates, the brain shifts into survival mode. Attention becomes narrow, immediate, and defensive. The body prepares to escape or fight. This response is invaluable when facing genuine danger. It has preserved human life for thousands of generations. But today's greatest dangers are often psychological rather than physical. The body reacts to financial uncertainty, criticism, public speaking, or personal failure, almost as if facing a predator in the wilderness. The ancient alarm system continues operating even when no lion stands nearby. As survival thinking increases, creativity decreases, curiosity fades, perspective shrinks. The imagination, once capable of solving problems, becomes occupied with inventing catastrophes instead. The survival mind asks only one question: how do I escape? The creative mind asks something entirely different: what can I build from here? This distinction has shaped civilizations. The builders of ancient temples could never have completed their monumental works if fear had governed every decision. Sailors who crossed unknown oceans would never have left familiar shores. Philosophers would never have questioned accepted beliefs. Every meaningful discovery required someone willing to continue despite uncertainty. Fear whispers, "Stay where you are." Wisdom quietly replies, "Keep walking." The Stoics never claimed fear could be eliminated completely. They recognized it as a natural muscle shared by every human being. Their goal was not fearlessness, but freedom. Courage, they believed, was not the absence of fear. Courage was refusing to surrender authority to fear. Epictetus often reminded his students that while events lie beyond our control, our response remains our greatest possession. Between every challenge and every reaction exists a small space where wisdom may still enter. That space changes everything. Imagine a traveler crossing a vast desert centuries ago. As evening approached, strange shapes appeared in the fading light. Certain they were hostile figures waiting to attack, he hid behind rocks throughout the night, terrified and exhausted. When dawn finally arrived, the frightening silhouettes revealed themselves to be nothing more than ordinary date palms swaying gently in the morning breeze. The traveler had not spent one night imprisoned by enemies. He had spent one night imprisoned by imagination. How often do we repeat the same mistake? We postpone dreams because we assume rejection. We avoid conversations because we predict conflict. We resist opportunities because we expect failure. Entire futures disappear beneath fears that never become reality. The invisible prison grows stronger each time it is obeyed. Ancient Egyptian wisdom schools often described fear as a veil placed over consciousness. Not because fear was evil, but because it distorted perception. It caused people to mistake temporary conditions for permanent identities. A single defeat became, "I am defeated." A single mistake became, "I am incapable." Yet identity was never meant to be defined by passing emotions. Like clouds crossing the sky, fear moves through consciousness but does not own it. The wise observer learns to witness fear without becoming it. Marcus Aurelius practiced this constantly. Though emperor of one of history's greatest civilizations, he faced plague, betrayal, war, and political uncertainty. Yet within his private reflections, he repeatedly reminded himself to examine impressions before accepting them as truth. A frightening thought was simply a thought until reason either confirmed or released it. His discipline protected his freedom. So can ours. Whenever fear appears, pause before immediately believing its story. Ask quietly, is this fact, or is this imagination? Is this danger, or merely discomfort? Does this fear deserve obedience or examination? Questions weaken fear's authority because they invite awareness where panic once ruled. Little by little, the invisible prison begins to dissolve, not because life becomes easier, but because perception becomes wiser. The ancient warrior eventually understood why the river had been his first battlefield. Victory over external circumstances always begins with victory over internal confusion. The calmest mind often becomes the strongest force in the room, not through aggression, but through clarity. For fear predicts only limitation. Wisdom reveals possibility. Guard your perception carefully. It quietly determines the size of your world. Chapter 7. Marcus Aurelius and the Invisible Kingdom. Among all the rulers who have sat upon thrones, few left behind words as quietly powerful as Marcus Aurelius. Surrounded by armies, political intrigue, disease, and uncertainty, he governed one of the largest empires in history. Yet when he wrote privately in what would later become Meditations, he spoke remarkably little about conquering nations. Instead, he wrote about conquering himself. To Marcus Aurelius, the greatest kingdom was invisible. It existed within the human mind. Many imagine an emperor possessing unlimited freedom, but Marcus understood something deeper. A person may command vast territories and still remain enslaved by anger, fear, pride, or resentment. Another may own almost nothing, and yet possess complete sovereignty over their thoughts. True freedom begins inside. This became one of the central pillars of Stoic philosophy. One evening, according to an old tradition, Marcus walked alone through the palace gardens after hearing troubling news from the frontiers of the empire. Advisors expected panic. Generals demanded immediate decisions. Rumors spread faster than facts. Instead of reacting instantly, Marcus remained silent for a long time. Finally, one young officer asked, "Does this news not disturb you?" The emperor answered with unusual calm, "The news has arrived, yes, but the suffering has not." The officer looked puzzled. Marcus continued, "The event belongs to the world. My judgment belongs to me." Those simple words reveal the heart of Stoic mastery. Events are neutral. Interpretation creates pain. This does not mean suffering is imaginary, or that genuine hardship should be ignored. Illness, grief, injustice, and loss are undeniably real. The Stoics never denied reality. Rather, they recognized that the mind often adds unnecessary suffering by arguing endlessly with what has already occurred. A single criticism becomes humiliation because pride interprets it that way. A delay becomes catastrophe because impatience demands immediate results. A mistake becomes lifelong failure because identity clings to perfection. The event is one thing, the interpretation is another. Modern cognitive psychology arrives at a remarkably similar conclusion. Researchers have found that our beliefs and interpretation significantly influence emotional responses. Two individuals may experience the same circumstance while arriving at entirely different emotional outcomes because each assigns different meaning to the event. The ancient philosophers discovered this through observation long before scientific terminology existed. Perception quietly shapes experience. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to interrupt automatic interpretation. Whenever adversity appeared, he deliberately asked whether he was seeing the event itself or merely his opinion about it. That question preserved his inner kingdom. Consider another story often told among Stoic teachers. A wealthy merchant lost an entire shipment during a violent storm at sea. One neighbor declared the event proof that fortune had abandoned him. Another predicted permanent ruin. The merchant simply replied, "We shall see." Months later, the storm unexpectedly redirected surviving cargo to a distant port where demand had doubled. The merchant recovered more than he originally expected. The neighbors had suffered twice, first from imagination, then from being wrong. The merchant suffered only the event itself. He refused to add unnecessary interpretation. The Stoics believed this discipline required daily practice. Every impression entering the mind deserved examination before acceptance. Just because a thought appeared did not make it true. I will fail. Is that certain? No one respects me. Can I know that? Everything is ruined, or has something simply changed? Questions restore sovereignty. Unchecked assumptions surrender it. Marcus often described the mind as a fortress that no external force could enter without permission. Armies could threaten cities. Illness could weaken the body. Time could erase monuments. Yet the inner citadel remained unconquered unless its owner willingly abandoned it. That image remains deeply relevant today. Modern life bombards us with opinions, comparisons, headlines, criticism, and endless distractions. Every hour invites emotional reaction. Without inner discipline, consciousness becomes occupied by voices that never truly belonged there. The invisible kingdom becomes overcrowded. Ancient wisdom suggests becoming a careful guardian of that kingdom. Not every opinion deserves entry. Not every fear deserves belief. Not every insult deserves residence. Choose your inner citizens wisely. There is also profound humility hidden inside Marcus Aurelius' writings. He continually reminded himself that every human being shares the same nature, the same mortality, and many of the same struggles. Compassion became easier because he no longer imagined himself separate from others. Even those who opposed him remained fellow travelers in life's brief journey. This softened judgment without weakening character. Strength became quieter. Authority became gentler. Wisdom became steadier. Such mastery cannot be achieved through occasional inspiration alone. It grows through ordinary moments. The pause before reacting, the willingness to reconsider assumptions, the habit of observing thoughts without immediately obeying them. These small victories gradually build an inner kingdom that no circumstance can easily overthrow. Perhaps this explains why Marcus Aurelius continues speaking across nearly 2,000 years. His empire eventually faded. Its borders changed, its monuments weathered, but the kingdom he built within himself remains remarkably alive through his words. Its gates are still open to every sincere seeker. Its laws remain simple. Guard your attention. Examine your judgments. Raster your reactions. Live according to reason rather than impulse, because the greatest throne you will ever occupy is not found in any palace. It is the quiet authority you hold over your own mind. Chapter 8. The Mirror Principle. The ancients often taught that life behaves less like a battlefield and more like a mirror. This did not mean that every hardship is self-created or that suffering is deserved. Storms arrive without invitation. Illness visits the wise and the foolish alike. Injustice exists, and misfortune sometimes falls upon the innocent. Ancient philosophy never denied these realities. Instead, the deeper teaching was subtler. Life constantly reveals our inner condition through the way we respond to what happens around us. The mirror is not the event. The mirror is the reaction. Two people may experience the same criticism. One immediately becomes defensive, angry, and wounded. The other pauses, considers whether any truth exists within the words, learns what is useful, and peacefully lets the rest disappear. The criticism remained identical. The reflection revealed two different inner worlds. The Stoic philosophers understood this remarkably well. Epictetus repeatedly reminded his students that events themselves rarely disturb us. Rather, it is the meaning we assign to those events that shapes our emotional experience. A person's character determines whether adversity becomes a prison or a teacher. The mirror never lies. It simply reflects. Imagine an old blacksmith working quietly in a mountain village centuries ago. Every apprentice who wished to learn the craft had to complete one unusual task before touching the forge. The master would hand them a rough piece of iron and ask them to polish it every evening until they could clearly see their own face. Many complained, "This has nothing to do with making swords." The old blacksmith would smile, "It has everything to do with it." Months later, when the iron finally reflected their faces perfectly, the apprentices understood. The polishing had never been about the metal. It had been about patience, discipline, humility, attention. Every stroke transformed not only the object, but also the one holding it. So it is with every challenge life places before us. Every disagreement asks whether we possess patience. Every disappointment reveals the strength of our resilience. Every temptation exposes the condition of our discipline. The world quietly reflects the character already forming within us. Modern psychology supports this ancient insight in surprising ways. Our minds constantly filter reality through established beliefs, emotional habits, and unconscious expectations. We notice evidence that confirms our existing worldview while overlooking information that challenges it. Two people may live in the same neighborhood, work in the same office, or belong to the same family, yet experience entirely different realities because each observes life through a different inner lens. The mirror changes with the observer. This understanding shifts us away from blame and toward responsibility. Responsibility does not mean condemning ourselves whenever life becomes difficult. It means recognizing that while we cannot always choose events, we can cultivate the inner qualities with which we meet them. This distinction is liberating. Blame weakens. Responsibility strengthens. There is a profound difference between saying, "Everything is my fault," and asking, "What is life inviting me to learn here?" One creates shame. The other creates wisdom. Ancient teachers consistently encouraged self-examination rather than self-condemnation. Socrates believed that the unexamined life gradually drifts into confusion because habits go unnoticed and assumptions remain unquestioned. Marcus Aurelius ended many evenings reviewing his own actions, not to punish himself, but to refine his character little by little. Growth begins with honest observation, not harsh judgment. Consider a gardener tending two orchards. One year, insects destroy part of the harvest. The inexperienced gardener curses fate, blames the weather, and abandons his work in frustration. The experienced gardener studies the trees carefully. He asks different questions. Were the roots healthy? Was the soil neglected? Could pruning have been better? He does not deny the storm, but neither does he surrender responsibility for what can still be improved. His orchard flourishes again because he treated difficulty as instruction rather than accusation. The same principle governs human consciousness. Every relationship becomes a mirror. Every setback becomes a lesson. Every success reveals character as much as every failure. When life repeatedly presents similar struggles, it may be inviting us to examine something deeper than circumstances alone. Perhaps impatience continues attracting unnecessary conflict. Perhaps pride keeps interrupting meaningful conversations. Perhaps fear quietly disguises itself as caution until opportunity disappears. The mirror patiently waits. It reflects whatever stands before it. A simple practice used by many ancient seekers was to end each day with 3 quiet questions. What disturbed me today? Why did it disturb me? What quality can I strengthen tomorrow? These questions slowly polish the mirror of awareness. They reveal hidden patterns before those patterns become permanent habits. Over time, the seeker begins changing not because life becomes easier, but because the observer becomes wiser. The traveler in the ancient temple eventually realized that the greatest pilgrimage is not measured by miles walked across deserts or mountains. It is measured by the willingness to see oneself honestly. For the clearest mirror in existence is consciousness itself. Look into it often, because reality reflects character. Chapter 9. The Art of Inner Silence. Across civilizations separated by oceans and centuries, wise men and women discovered a remarkable truth. Genuine insight rarely arrives during moments of noise, hurry, or emotional turbulence. It appears most naturally when consciousness becomes quiet enough to receive it. Silence is not emptiness. It is preparation. The sages of India sought it beneath forest trees. Taoist hermits found it in mountain caves. Stoic philosophers practiced it through inward reflection. Desert mystics embraced it beneath endless skies. Though their traditions differed, they all returned to one enduring discovery. The deepest answers speak softly. Modern life often mistakes constant activity for meaningful progress. Every spare moment becomes filled with conversation, music, notifications, entertainment, or endless mental rehearsal. The mind grows so accustomed to stimulation that silence begins feeling uncomfortable. Many people fear being alone with their own thoughts because those thoughts have been patiently waiting beneath the noise. Yet, ancient teachers saw silence differently. They viewed it as a sacred mirror. Within stillness, hidden motives become visible. Unresolved grief quietly rises. Forgotten gratitude returns. Creative ideas emerge without force. Wisdom has room to breathe. Imagine an old calligrapher in imperial China preparing to write a single sentence intended for the emperor. Before touching brush to paper, he spent nearly an hour sitting motionless before a blank sheet. A curious apprentice finally whispered, "Master, why do you wait so long?" The old artist answered without opening his eyes, "I am waiting until my hand no longer interrupts my heart." Only then did he begin writing. Every stroke carried unusual grace because it emerged from inner stillness rather than restless impulse. The greatest works often begin with silence. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply, despite living amid endless political demands. Although surrounded by soldiers, advisors, petitions, and conflict, he repeatedly withdrew into what he called the inner citadel, a place of mental quiet untouched by external chaos. He reminded himself that nowhere could a person find greater peace than within a well-governed mind. This invisible refuge remained available regardless of circumstances. Noise belongs to the world. Stillness belongs to consciousness. Modern neuroscience offers fascinating support for this ancient practice. During periods of quiet reflection, the brain activates networks associated with self-awareness, memory integration, creativity, and long-term perspective. When external stimulation decreases, the mind often begins organizing experiences into deeper understanding. Insight requires space. Ancient wisdom already knew this. Consider a hunter tracking deer through dense forests centuries ago. He understood that loud footsteps frightened away every animal long before it appeared. Only when he slowed his breathing, softened his movements, and became almost silent did the hidden life of the forest gradually reveal itself. The soul behaves much the same way. Rush through life and wisdom remains hidden, becomes still, and subtle truths quietly emerge. This does not require retreating permanently to monasteries or mountains. The sacred practice of silence can exist within ordinary life. 5 minutes before dawn, a quiet walk beneath evening skies, a cup of tea without distraction, a notebook opened before sleep, a few slow breaths before responding during conflict. These seemingly insignificant moments slowly retrain consciousness. Instead of reacting automatically, we begin responding deliberately. Instead of being carried away by every passing emotion, we become its observer. The difference transforms relationships, decisions, and even identity itself. Silence also teaches humility. In conversation, we often listen only long enough to prepare our next response. In stillness, however, there is no argument to win, no impression to maintain, no performance to sustain. Only awareness remains. The ancient monks believed silence gradually reveals 3 hidden treasures. First, it reveals ourselves. Second, it reveals others with greater compassion. Finally, it reveals life itself with unexpected clarity. Perhaps that is why the oldest monk never hurried to answer questions. He knew that wisdom discovered personally remains far more powerful than wisdom merely borrowed from another. The lake reflects only when still, so does the mind. Begin with only a few quiet minutes each day. Leave behind the constant stream of voices, opinions, and distractions. Sit without needing to fix anything. Simply observe. Let thoughts come and go like clouds crossing an open sky. Little by little, something remarkable happens. The noise begins to fade. Awareness deepens. Peace quietly returns. And from that silence, the next step often reveals itself without force. Practice intentional silence, for the loudest truths are rarely spoken aloud. Chapter 10. The Discipline of Inner Order. Walk into 2 different homes before dawn, and without a single word being spoken, you can often sense 2 entirely different states of mind. In one home, every object seems to have found its proper place. The morning begins quietly, each task flowing naturally into the next. In the other, forgotten responsibilities pile upon crowded tables. Unfinished work competes for attention, and every movement feels hurried before the day has truly begun. The difference is not merely decoration. It is a reflection of order. The ancient world understood something that modern life frequently overlooks. External order quietly supports internal clarity. Wise civilizations did not arrange their temples, cities, rituals, and daily routines simply for beauty. They believed that harmony in one's surroundings gently encouraged harmony within the soul. Order was never obsession, it was preparation. Among the builders of ancient Egypt, every stone placed within a temple followed precise proportions. Sacred geometry was more than architectural skill. It symbolized the belief that the universe itself unfolded through balance, rhythm, and intelligent design. Every column, corridor, and chamber reflected a deeper conviction. That lasting strength arises from alignment rather than accident. To step into one of these temples was to enter visible harmony. The structure itself became a silent teacher. Many initiates spent years maintaining these sacred spaces before they were entrusted with higher knowledge. They swept marble floors, polished bronze vessels, aligned ceremonial objects, and cared for gardens with extraordinary precision. To an impatient observer, these tasks seemed ordinary, yet the masters knew something profound. The temple was not the only thing being organized. The person performing the work was also being transformed. An old Egyptian story tells of a young novice assigned to care for a single sanctuary lamp every evening. He cleaned its bronze surface, trimmed the wick, and carefully replenished the oil before sunset. Months passed, then years. Eventually, the young man became frustrated. "Master," he asked, "when will I be taught the hidden mysteries?" The elder priest looked toward the perfectly tended lamp. "You already are." The novice looked puzzled. The old man smiled gently. "Every evening you believed you were preserving the flame." He paused before continuing. "But the flame has been preserving you." Only then did the student understand. Each repeated act of care had quietly cultivated patience. Every small responsibility had strengthened discipline. The lamp illuminated not only the temple, but the character of the one entrusted to protect it. The smallest rituals shape the deepest habits. This same truth appears throughout nearly every ancient tradition. Confucius taught that character is formed through repeated acts of propriety. Aristotle believed excellence arises not from occasional greatness, but from habitual virtue. The Stoics practiced daily reflection because they understood that consistency gradually becomes identity. Great lives are built quietly, one ordinary day at a time. Modern psychology confirms what these ancient teachers observed through experience. Habits reduce mental friction. Ordered environments decrease unnecessary cognitive load, allowing the brain to devote greater attention to meaningful work rather than constant decision-making. Small routines preserve energy that would otherwise be wasted on avoidable disorder. Chaos consumes attention. Order releases it. Imagine a master musician preparing for an important performance. Before touching the instrument, he carefully arranges every sheet of music, tunes each string, and ensures the room is free from distraction. None of these actions create the music directly, yet without them, the performance suffers. Preparation protects excellence. Human consciousness works much the same way. A disordered morning often produces a distracted afternoon. Unfinished tasks linger in the background of the mind like half-heard conversations. Clutter becomes more than physical. It quietly occupies emotional and mental space. The ancient Stoics therefore encouraged beginning each day with intention rather than reaction. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself each morning of the kind of person he wished to become before the world demanded his attention. By establishing inner order first, external disorder became less capable of disturbing him. The Taoist sages expressed a similar principle through different language. They observed that nature itself follows elegant rhythms. Rivers flow according to gravity. Seasons arrive without hurry. Trees blossom in their appointed time. Nothing essential competes with itself. Order does not rush, it unfolds. There is profound wisdom in this observation. Much of modern exhaustion arises not from meaningful work, but from fragmented attention. We begin many things and finish few. We react before reflecting. We fill every moment with urgency until peace itself feels unfamiliar. Ancient wisdom offers another way. Simplify, complete what is before you. Honor ordinary responsibilities. Allow rhythm to replace chaos. This is not merely productivity, it is spiritual architecture. Consider an old gardener who cared for the grounds surrounding a mountain monastery. Visitors often praise the beauty of the flowers and towering cedar trees, assuming the gardener possessed unusual talent. One traveler finally asked, "What is your secret?" The old man smiled. "I pulled today's weeds today. Nothing more, no extraordinary technique, no hidden formula, simply faithful attention before small problems became overwhelming ones." The same principle governs the inner life. Resentment is easier to release while it is still small. Fear is easier to examine before it grows into panic. Neglected habits become stubborn patterns. Small disciplines quietly prevent large crises. Each evening offers another opportunity to restore order, not only by organizing our surroundings, but by arranging our thoughts. Many ancient seekers ended the day by asking simple questions. What did I neglect? What deserves gratitude? What can I improve tomorrow? These reflections gradually create a mind that is less reactive, more intentional, and increasingly peaceful. Order is not perfection. Perfection often produces anxiety because it demands impossible standards. Order, by contrast, simply means placing each thing in its rightful place. Work has its place. Rest has its place. Silence has its place. Relationships have their place. Privation has its place. When these rhythms become honored rather than neglected, life acquires an unexpected lightness. Freedom does not arise from endless choices. It arises from wise structure. The ancient temple builders knew this long before the first stone was laid. Strong foundations make great heights possible. So begin with small acts. Make your bed. Finish one neglected task. Clear one forgotten corner. Keep one meaningful promise. Repeat tomorrow. Little by little, these ordinary disciplines become extraordinary strength. For every ordered room quietly trains an ordered mind. Every ordered mind strengthens an ordered life, and every ordered life creates greater freedom. Because in the end, the ancient masters were right. Order creates freedom. Chapter 11. The Path of Continuous Transformation. An old blacksmith living in a quiet mountain village forged the finest swords anyone had ever seen. Travelers journeyed for weeks simply to watch him work. Yet when they entered his workshop, expecting secret tools or mysterious techniques, they found only an ordinary forge, a weathered hammer, and an aging craftsman whose movements were calm and unhurried. One young apprentice finally asked, "Master, how does cold iron become something so strong?" The old blacksmith placed a glowing blade back into the fire. "It never becomes strong by remaining comfortable." Again and again the metal entered the flames. Again and again it was struck. Again and again it was cooled. Each cycle appeared harsh, yet every cycle removed weakness hidden deep within. The apprentice watched silently. Years later, he realized the blacksmith had never been speaking only about iron. He had been speaking about human consciousness. The ancient world rarely viewed life's challenges as interruptions to personal growth. Instead, hardship itself was often understood as the workshop where character was patiently refined. Fire strengthened gold. Wind strengthened trees. Time strengthened wisdom. Why should the human spirit be any different? Transformation has always been the quiet law of existence. The Stoics embraced adversity because it revealed virtue. Courage cannot exist without danger. Patience cannot develop without delay. Compassion becomes meaningful only where suffering is present. Difficulties did not create character from nothing. They uncovered what was already waiting within. Taoist philosophy approached the same truth from another direction. Rather than fighting change, the Taoist sage learned to move with it. Rivers remain powerful not because they resist every obstacle, but because they adapt. Water bends without breaking. It flows around stone while eventually shaping mountains. Flexibility becomes strength. Resistance becomes exhaustion. Though Stoicism emphasizes disciplined resilience and Taoism emphasizes harmonious flow, these traditions meet upon common ground. Both reject unnecessary struggle against reality. Both teach that wisdom lies not in controlling every circumstance, but in transforming the self that encounters those circumstances. Different paths, one destination. Imagine two ancient travelers crossing the same mountain pass during winter. A violent snowstorm suddenly blocks the road. The first traveler curses the mountain. He wastes precious energy, demanding that reality become different. Hours pass. Nothing changes except his growing frustration. The second traveler studies the landscape quietly. Seeing that the main path is impossible, she notices an older trail winding gently through nearby trees. It requires greater patience, but eventually reaches the same destination. The mountain remained unchanged. Only the traveler changed. That difference determined everything. How often do we repeat the mistake of the first traveler? We resist aging instead of embracing wisdom. We resist uncertainty instead of cultivating courage. We resist change instead of discovering hidden opportunities within it. Every season of life asks something different from us. Childhood asks wonder. Youth asks courage. Adulthood asks responsibility. Later years ask perspective. To cling desperately to one season while rejecting the next creates unnecessary suffering. Nature never argues with its own cycles. Neither should we. Modern neuroscience offers a remarkable parallel to these ancient insights. Scientists now understand that the brain possesses extraordinary adaptability throughout life. Neural pathways strengthen through repeated experience, and new connections continue forming well into old age. This ability, often called neuroplasticity, means that learning, emotional growth, and personal transformation remain possible far longer than once believed. The ancients did not know the science. They knew the reality. They observed that people who remained curious continued growing. Those who surrendered to rigid certainty gradually became imprisoned by their own habits. Growth belongs to the humble. There is an old Taoist tale about an elderly bamboo farmer who was asked why his grove survived storms that destroyed mighty oak trees nearby. He answered simply, "The oak argued with the wind. The bamboo listened. Because it bent, it endured. Because it endured, it continued growing." This simple image contains astonishing wisdom. Life does not reward stubbornness nearly as often as it rewards adaptability. The strongest people are rarely those who never change. They are those who never stop learning. Marcus Aurelius demonstrated this throughout his life. Despite ruling an empire, he never considered himself finished. His private journal reveals a man continually correcting his own judgments, refining his thoughts, and challenging his assumptions. Authority did not end his education, it deepened it. The greatest teachers remain students. This mindset transforms every difficulty into instruction. A painful conversation becomes an opportunity to strengthen patience. Failure becomes a teacher of humility. Success becomes a reminder to remain grateful rather than proud. Nothing is wasted. Everything shapes us. Ancient initiates often compared spiritual development to climbing a sacred mountain. Each level offered a wider view than the last, yet reaching one summit simply revealed another waiting beyond it. Wisdom was never a destination where learning ceased. It was a lifelong ascent. Perhaps this is the greatest secret shared by both Stoicism and Taoism. Peace does not come from arriving. It comes from walking well. The path itself becomes the reward. So when challenges appear, resist the temptation to ask only, "Why is this happening to me?" Instead ask, "What is this shaping within me?" That single question transforms adversity into apprenticeship. Every season becomes meaningful. Every setback becomes preparation. Every ordinary day becomes another opportunity to become a little wiser than yesterday. Because the soul, like the finest steel, is strengthened through faithful refinement. And that refinement continues for as long as life itself continues. There is no final lesson, no last mountain, no completed masterpiece. Only the quiet invitation to keep becoming. Because the ancient masters understood what every sincere seeker eventually discovers. Growth never finishes. Chapter 12. The final secret hidden by the masters. For thousands of years, across deserts, mountains, forests, temples, monasteries, and forgotten libraries, humanity has searched for a single hidden truth. Empires rose believing they possessed it. Mystics spent lifetimes protecting it. Philosophers devoted every waking hour to understanding it. The remarkable discovery is that although these traditions spoke different languages and wore different symbols, they repeatedly pointed toward the same quiet revelation. The greatest secret was never hidden because it was too complicated. It was hidden because it was too simple for a restless mind to notice. Hermetic priests of ancient Egypt taught that the universe reflected immutable principles that operated whether people recognized them or not. Taoist sages wandered among rivers and mountains, observing that life flourished whenever force gave way to harmony. Stoic philosophers instructed emperors and slaves alike that freedom begins where self-mastery begins. The seers of the Upanishads spoke of a consciousness deeper than personality, deeper than memory, deeper even than thought itself. Each tradition seemed unique, yet beneath the surface flowed the same underground river. The names differed, the destination did not. Imagine an old traveler arriving at 5 distant cities over the course of many years. In one city, he met a Hermetic teacher who spoke of the divine mind. In another, a Taoist sage who described the effortless movement of water. In another, a Stoic elder who insisted that peace depended upon governing one's own judgments. Farther east, a Vedic teacher spoke of awakening from illusion to discover the self beyond the self. Finally, an Egyptian initiate explained that every temple was only a symbol of the temple hidden within the human heart. The traveler expected 5 different answers. Instead, he received one answer spoken 5 different ways. That realization transformed his life more than any individual teaching ever could. The Hermetic masters declared that the universe is fundamentally mental, not in the sense that thoughts magically command reality, but that perception, interpretation, intention, and awareness profoundly shape the reality each person inhabits. Stoicism arrived at a remarkably similar conclusion from another direction. Marcus Aurelius continually reminded himself that events themselves rarely disturb us as much as the meanings we assign to them. Taoism added another dimension by showing that unnecessary resistance creates needless suffering, while harmony with life's rhythms allows clearer judgment and wiser action. The Vedic sages went still deeper, suggesting that beneath the changing personality exists an awareness untouched by fear, success, failure, praise, or loss. Different roads, one summit. Modern psychology has begun describing many of these observations in different language. Our attention determines what information enters conscious awareness. Our beliefs influence expectations. Expectations influence behavior. Behavior gradually shapes relationships, opportunities, habits, and eventually the story we call a life. None of this requires mystical certainty. It simply reveals that consciousness quietly governs the quality of our choices, long before circumstances reveal their consequences. This is why the ancient masters spent so little time trying to change the world directly. They first transformed the observer. An old Egyptian story tells of an apprentice who begged to learn the highest mysteries immediately. He wished to understand hidden symbols, sacred geometry, celestial movements, and the powers whispered about among the priests. His teacher did something unexpected. Instead of opening the temple library, he handed the young man a simple broom. For 30 days, the master said, "Sweep every floor before sunrise." The apprentice obeyed, though frustration filled his heart. Surely such work had nothing to do with hidden wisdom. Yet each morning the master watched silently as the student swept with impatience, then with boredom, then with resentment, then finally with complete attention. On the 31st morning the master smiled. "Now," he said, "you are ready." The apprentice looked around in confusion. "I have learned nothing." The old teacher replied gently, "You have learned the only lesson that matters. The temple was never dirty. Your consciousness was." Everything else became possible after that. The masters understood something modern life often forgets. Every lasting transformation begins invisibly. Before habits change, attention changes. Before character changes, awareness changes. Before destiny changes, daily perception changes. The invisible always leads the visible. That is why the greatest practice is rarely dramatic. It consists of returning again and again to conscious awareness throughout ordinary life. Not while sitting only in meditation. Not only while reading sacred books, but while speaking with family, making decisions, facing disappointments, solving problems, earning a living, and encountering strangers. Every ordinary moment becomes practice. If you truly wish to explore this ancient path, consider accepting a simple 30-day challenge. Not as a promise of supernatural results, but as an experiment in conscious living. Each morning, spend 5 quiet minutes observing your thoughts before reaching for distraction. Notice them without immediately believing them. Throughout the day, guard your attention. Ask yourself where your mind repeatedly travels. Does it continually return to fear, resentment, comparison, or gratitude? Attention is precious because it gradually becomes character. Practice intentional stillness every day, even if only for a few minutes. Ancient monasteries, Taoist retreats, and Stoic reflection all understood the same truth. Silence reveals what constant activity conceals. Whenever difficult situations arise, pause before reacting. Replace immediate emotional impulse with conscious observation. A calm response often changes outcomes more effectively than forceful reaction ever could. Finally, each evening, reflect honestly. Ask 3 simple questions. What strengthened my character today? What weakened it? What wisdom did today's experiences quietly offer? Small questions, profound answers. The masters never promised perfection. They promised refinement. Every day offers another opportunity to become slightly more awake than yesterday. Over years, those almost invisible improvements reshape an entire life. The greatest mystery, then, is not hidden inside forgotten temples or sealed manuscripts. It is hidden inside unnoticed moments of ordinary awareness. The world has always reflected the quality of the consciousness observing it. That reflection may be subtle rather than magical, gradual rather than immediate, but it remains one of the oldest insights shared across civilizations. The sages left countless books. They were all pointing inward. Remember this final lesson from the ancient masters. The world changes only after the one who sees it has changed. Chapter 13. The Forbidden Conclusion. There is an old legend that after the final lesson had been given, the master extinguished the lamp, leaving his students in complete darkness. One disciple protested, "Master, how shall we find the way now?" The old teacher answered from the darkness, "You have spent years learning to carry your own light." That final exchange captures the true conclusion of nearly every ancient wisdom tradition. Humanity has long searched for someone else to rescue it, for a perfect leader, a flawless philosophy, a hidden treasure, or a miraculous secret capable of eliminating uncertainty forever. Yet the oldest teachers consistently redirected attention away from external dependence and back toward conscious participation in life itself. The forgotten truth is not that human beings control every event. History clearly teaches otherwise. Storms arrive, illness visits, time changes everything. Loss cannot always be prevented. What the masters insisted upon was something equally powerful. Human beings possess remarkable influence over the way experience is interpreted, responded to, and ultimately integrated into character. That influence is easily forgotten. The Hermetic philosophers described humanity as participating in a living universe rather than standing apart from it. Stoics emphasized responsibility over complaint. Taoists trusted the wisdom of alignment rather than endless struggle. Vedic teachers invited seekers beyond the restless ego into a quieter awareness that observes without becoming imprisoned by every passing thought. Different traditions, one invitation: become conscious. Because consciousness quietly directs experience every single day. It determines where attention rests. Attention influences interpretation. Interpretation guides decisions. Repeated decisions become habits. Habits become character. Character gradually shapes the life others eventually call destiny. The chain is almost invisible while it is happening. Only years later do most people recognize where it began. Not with circumstances, with consciousness. Modern neuroscience echoes part of this ancient observation. The brain constantly filters overwhelming amounts of information, bringing forward what appears most relevant according to established patterns of attention, expectation, memory, and emotion. Ancient wisdom expressed this poetically. Science describes aspects of it biologically. Both remind us that how we meet reality influences what we experience within it. This realization carries both humility and hope. Humility because we cannot command every outcome. Hope because we are not powerless within those outcomes. there is always a response available, always another interpretation to examine, always another opportunity to choose wisdom instead of impulse. That choice is where freedom quietly begins. Perhaps that is why the greatest